Because you have one or more symptoms doesn't mean that you actually have diabetes. Always go to the doctor or the nearest health center and get checked out. Now, with the types of diabetes, you will have different symptoms, especially.
Just 1 second, just to interrupt here. I think I really missed out. All right, because this afternoon, as I said before, we were not on last week. All right, and we missed last week. And a while ago, I really thought we were live. I really thought we were live. So we're going to have to go back just a little bit.
Okay.
All right. For those who are just joining us, I clicked the live button and we did not go live. So for those of you just joining us again, this is Team Family here with Linnell and Adonna, Lady Sabby and Adonna. All right. And joining us this afternoon is Mrs. Nashiba Duncan. All right, and today we're talking about diabetes management, all right, the nutrition approach, okay, and as I said before, we'd like for those of you who you may be diagnosed already with diabetes, you may be, you may have a member of the family, maybe a mom, a dad, a child, a sister, a brother, somebody who has diabetes, or maybe it's just a disease that you're interested in finding out more about. Maybe after today you might find out, possibly it may be in your family, maybe you need to go check out yourself. All right, and that's what we're talking about today, and I apologize for that little hiccup there. All right, we thought we were live and we actually were not live. All right, so good afternoon again. This is Team Family, and we're talking to Mrs. Nashiba Duncan. She is a dietitian, nutritionist, company Simply Nutrition, and she's telling us more about diabetes today.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for having me. So I'm just going to dive into everything, and we're talking about diabetes management, particularly an approach when it comes from a nutrition standpoint. So before we get into the food conversation, we're going to talk a little bit about what diabetes is. And our agenda for today is to give you basic information about diabetes, to explain high blood sugar levels, and how can diabetes be managed with good nutrition. So what is diabetes? Diabetes is a chronic, long-lasting disease that affects how our body turns food into energy. It affects how our body turns food into energy. So I want us to make note of that point. Food and energy. How does that affect our blood sugar levels? What are some of the signs and symptoms of diabetes? Frequent urination, especially at night. Very thirsty, especially having a craving for sweet stuff or just an extra sugar craving. No matter how much you drink, you don't feel satisfied. If you're losing weight too much and you haven't made any plans to lose weight, you're always hungry. Your vision become very blurry. You have tingling feelings and numbness in the hands and feet, especially like the tips of the fingers and the toes. If you feel very tired, dry skin, any bruising or sores or anything that is not healing fast enough, and frequent infection. Someone with diabetes type 1, then they have extra symptoms like nausea and vomiting and stomach pain. For type 2 or gestational, they usually don't have much symptoms except they go to a doctor's visit and they get a blood sugar reading that might be elevated or abnormal.
I have a question though. I don't know if you possibly maybe you're going into the different types of diabetes, the type 1 and type 2. So maybe that question can wait, because I had a question regarding the gestational one, because I'm wondering. But maybe that will come later on.
What are the different types of diabetes? Here we have the three types that we know of currently and mainly. So we have type 1. This is where we call when we talk about it runs in the family. It's where the pancreas makes very little to no insulin at all, right? So we have the insulin, which is like a key basically to a lock in the body, where it helps glucose enter blood for energy. So every time we eat our food, right, so carbohydrate or food is broken down into glucose, and we need glucose for energy. We need insulin now to get that glucose into the cell. If that glucose does not get into the cell, it stays around floating in the bloodstream. causing havoc, damage nerve endings, damage your kidneys and everything, right? So that's why persons on type 1 have to take exogenous insulin, where they get an injection, and that insulin will transport the glucose into the cell, right? And that's why we have blood sugar regulation. So in type 1, those persons, the pancreas is making insulin very little or not enough. So then therefore the glucose cannot get into the cell. So we have high blood sugar reading or high glucose reading, as we say. Tend to be in teens and children and young adults, but it can happen to persons at any age as well. Then we have type 2, where the cells now in the pancreas don't usually respond to the insulin. So you hear a lot of insulin resistance, right? So this is type 2 now. And we talk about where the pancreas makes the insulin. And so the body, the pancreas makes it, but the cell is not responding to it, versus type 1, where it have very little or none at all. And then we have gestational, which is developed in women during pregnancy, because you have changes like weight gain and hormonal changes, and all those changes during pregnancy causes our cells to use insulin less effectively. You have the question for me now?
Yes. All right. So you have type 1, type 2, and then you have gestational, right? Because what I was wondering is what really causes a pregnant woman to actually develop this gestational diabetes. So if I'm pregnant, or if I know somebody who's pregnant, what can I tell them to help them prevent themselves from actually getting gestational diabetes?
So gestational diabetes most of the time is when persons have not been diagnosed with diabetes before. So they live in a normal lifestyle and then they get pregnant and then they get that reading. However, there are persons who have been diagnosed with diabetes before pregnancy. That is not considered gestational. It's already diabetes, right? It's just diabetes in pregnancy, but not gestational. Correct? So now when we have gestational diabetes, a lot of it is diet and lifestyle, because persons that are overweight and obese prior pregnancy, their chance of having insulin resistance in pregnancy increases because we have extra fat in the body, right? And we talk about that lock and key situation with the glucose and the insulin. Extra fat basically creates a barrier between the two, where the insulin now cannot really get that glucose inside the cell, right? So diet and lifestyle is key. Now, some persons are predisposed with genetics, so they always have to pay attention to that. Even though you're not diagnosed with diabetes, if it runs in your family and you're thinking about getting pregnant at some point, you want to make sure that diet and lifestyle is up to par.
Okay, because I was just about to ask, because I know somebody who is, I consider them to be very skinny, but when they got pregnant, they got gestational diabetes, and it wasn't that they were necessarily overweight, but I think what happened too is that diabetes reigns in the family. It
exists in the family.
Exists in the family. Why I say reigns? All right. So maybe I think that was actually one of the cases that they should have considered, in watching their diet and so on as they become pregnant. Yes.
Lifestyle.
Yes, lifestyle.
What are high blood sugar levels? And we have them red, danger, right? So we see some of the high levels there. The A1C, which is a hemoglobin A1C, a test that is done periodically to check to see, well, what has my blood sugar reading been for the past 3 months? So at times persons know they have to go to the doctor, so they will try to have a proper meal the day before or fast the day before, so the morning fasting reading comes out normal, perfect, and you trying to trick us, the professionals, and say, well, look, my fasting is perfect, it's normal, it's less than 99 or between 99 and 100, so I'm good. But when the A1C test comes back and it shows 6.5 and 5.7 and above, I'm going to ask you, well, tell me what is it you have been doing? Because while your fasting may show normal, if the A1C shows abnormal, then you are at risk for diabetes if you have not been diagnosed before, right? So here are some of the readings that we do. So if your A1C is less than 5.7, you're good. Anything above, you're at risk for prediabetes or diabetes. Likewise, a fasting blood sugar, and likewise the glucose tolerance test. With the glucose tolerance test, you'll do an OGTT, that's for persons that are pregnant, or when you do a test 2 hours after your meal, what we call the 2-hour postprandial, then if your blood sugar reading is above 140, 180, then you're at risk for diabetes if you have not been diagnosed as yet.
Okay.
All right. Let me see if I understand this thing a little bit more clearly. So the A1C test, that is, explain that one, the A1C test.
So it's a blood test that is done not every month, not every week, but every 3 to 6 months. It depends on what's going on with the person. But if you haven't had one done before, say for instance you had some of the symptoms, you go get checked out by the doctor, and doctor is concerned about you having diabetes, then they will run all those tests. That's like your baseline.
All right.
After you have been diagnosed, so some persons just get diagnosed pre-diabetes, or questionable diabetes because A1C has been elevated. Some of those can be corrected with diet. It all depends on what other comorbidities that you have going on with you.
Okay, so you do the A1C test and then you do the fasting blood
you can
sugar.
do all three.
All three, and then the
As
glucose
a baseline,
tolerance.
yes.
Okay.
But if you have been diagnosed with diabetes for many years, then you want to check your A1C every 3 to 6 months, because what happens is that the A1C captures a reading of what your average blood sugar levels has been for the past 3 months.
Oh.
So even if your fasting is normal, your A1C could be abnormal, and it's an actual true reading for persons trying to trick the professionals that we get to see that, hey, you have not been adhering to diet and medication because your A1C is in the red zone.
Okay, okay, I get
And that's
it.
when it's above
6.5%.
For diabetes.
And the percentage shows how much glucose in the blood at
Yes, some
Yeah.
readings would, but we just look at the percentage here because there's a conversion that you can get to see all the particular numbers as well. So I was about to say something about the A1C and I forgot. With the A1C test, right? We have to make sure to take it serious. Right, we have seen persons that came with A1C like 12 and 14, and some, it can't. Yes, it's unreadable. So we want to be very mindful as to what we do, because some persons follow diet and medication, they feel okay, symptoms are gone, everything come back down to normal, so they think they're safe, and then they go back to just do it basically anything, or as we say, well, once in a while. And when you do a recall, a once in a while turns out to be every week. Right, because when we think, okay, well, I had once this week, next week they forgot they had one, and then it's just once in a while, very rare, and then all those things add up. What causes high blood sugar levels? Many things can cause high blood sugar, as we call it hyperglycemia. If someone has been diagnosed with diabetes and living with diabetes, if they're ill, the blood sugar levels will go up. Sign of infection, the blood sugar levels will go up. If you're overly stressed, your blood sugar levels will go up.
Wow.
If you're eating more than planned, or you're eating a huge meal, especially your carbohydrate choices, like our traditional foods like our oil dung and everything on that plate is provision, and the starches, or like our pilau, and everything is just rice and chicken and no veggies. Having high carbohydrates intake, and the juice is sweetened, the tea is sweetened, and everything is sweetened, then we increases our chance of having high blood sugar levels. And persons that are taking insulin, if they're not taking enough insulin, then that too can cause high blood sugar levels. What should be your ideal blood sugar level? A blood sugar target is a range you try to reach as much as possible. Now, it varies for person to person. While there is a standard, depends on how old the person is, especially for older adults, the range is not as strict. If persons have other comorbidities and trauma and infections and other things going on, the ranges vary. So this is like a typical target, or we call a standard, before your meal. So before you eat anything, fasting in the morning, your reading should be between 80 and 130. I like to try to get persons to stick between 80 and 100. These are perfect numbers, so that's the ideal range. Some persons that have fasting 300 and above, we will titrate them down. So the initial goal will be 140, and as they progress with diet and medication, we bring them down to 130, and so on and so forth. Likewise, if they're taking the blood sugar 2 hours after the heaviest meal, then you want to be less than 180 as best as possible.
Okay.
When should I check my blood sugar? How often you check your blood sugar depends on the type of diabetes you have. With gestational diabetes, they don't check it as often, but with type 1 and type 2, it depends on the type of medication. So if you're taking insulin, you want to check it more regularly, because persons on insulin have a higher risk of going low at hypoglycemic episodes. So you want to pay attention to that, right? But if you have a typical regimen, and typical times could be when you wake up first thing in the morning, before you eat or drink anything, you check your blood sugar. Before your meal, you check your blood sugar. 2 hours after your meal, and at bedtime, you check your blood sugar. As I said, type 1, type 2, if on insulin, and if you go hypo regularly, you want to check your blood sugar more frequently.
I have a question though. The persons, I've known persons that like you might be somewhere and you hear of somebody, or they have diabetes, and then you need to go run and get a mint or something for them. Is that somebody with type 1, type 2, or why do we need
It varies.
Why do we need to give them a mint or something sweet?
So when you have somebody rushing for something sweet, it means that the blood sugar has dropped below normal levels. So usually anything less than 70, less than 80. Some persons feel it as 79 hit, they start to feel sick, right? So then you will say, oh, this person is going hypo. It's a hypoglycemic episode. The blood sugar has dropped severely. It's life threatening, because some person go into a coma and never recover, right? So that's why you also want to make sure that your diet is balanced. Make sure you know your numbers, because some person have no idea what their blood sugar range is or what is their normal. So as I was saying, if you have type 1 diabetes, type 2, you're on insulin, you want to check more frequently. Now, not just based on the type, because some persons could be type 2 but they're on insulin because they don't have good management, right? And so persons, most type 1 is on insulin, so definitely they have to check more frequently. If you have a good baseline and you know what your numbers are, you don't have to check as frequently. But to correct a hypoglycemic episode, if someone tells you they're going hypo, person should always have their monitor or their finger sticks close by. So a caregiver or somebody could easily check, or if they're alert enough to check for themselves, right? And they're going to see what the readings are. But once you feel it, you will know that you're low. The first thing you have to give them 1 serving of carbohydrate. So that could be half a cup of juice or half a cup of milk, not a whole malt. Like sometimes people will drink a whole malt, 2 and 3 malt, and then the blood sugar come back up, but then it go way above, and then it's trouble to bring it back down. So it still have to be measured, right? You check half a cup of juice. If for the malt, the same half a cup, you wait 15 minutes. Right? And then you check it again. If it has not gone back up to the normal level, you repeat. Once you go back up to the normal level, you have a meal, and then you rest.
Yeah. As you're talking about it, I'm not sure if you'll be talking about it further down in the discussion, but some people, they are on medication for diabetes and they don't eat regularly, and you find they go into this hypo.
Yes.
So, is there an advice for them? What advice would you have for them?
A balanced diet with proper meal time. So a lot of time we get up in the morning, we check our blood sugar, and then we just keep going through the day. Sometimes we skip breakfast. If you're on insulin, you should not skip any meals. Anybody having diagnosed with diabetes should avoid skipping meals, period. But persons on insulin, they tend to have hypo between breakfast and lunch, so they can have a AM snack around that time. If they're not going hypo, then that's okay, they can move on to lunch. But some persons, especially on insulin, they will need that bridge between there, so they would not drop. So most times they will have a mid-morning or mid-afternoon snack, right? And we recommend different things for them that they can have based on their preferences, their diet choices, and other things like that, right? So it should be breakfast, morning snack, lunch, afternoon snack, and supper.
Okay. Yeah.
So now we're into the medical nutrition therapy for diabetes management. We touch a little bit on it with the questions you guys were asking, but now we're going to go full-blown nutrition for everybody. All right? What type of diet should you follow if you have been diagnosed with diabetes? Just generally eating a healthy diet is a key to managing blood sugar, not just for persons who have been diagnosed with diabetes, but for everybody, general population, right? Because it is natural. Once we eat, our blood sugar spike. It's a natural process. The difference is that persons that have been diagnosed with diabetes, their body cannot control that spike on its own, so they need help. With us, we could. But then that's why in type 2, if we continue eating anyhow, that constant spike causes damages to the kidneys, to the pancreas, and then out of nowhere you hear, well, I don't have it in my family, I don't know where you come from, but checking that your diet and lifestyle, chronic alcohol drinkers for one, those really increases the risk for diabetes. So the diet recommended is a diabetic diet, and we still want to modify the salt intake as well. So what does a diet entail? Increase non-starchy vegetables. A lot of times persons we ask, are you having vegetables? Yes, tell me what you had. Well, I had fig and yam and so on and so forth. We refer to our starchy foods or provisions as our non-starchy vegetables, but actually that's incorrect. Our non-starchy vegetables are like our lettuce or cabbage or carrots and all those lighter stuff, right? So you want to increase those amount on your plate. You want to have less sugar and refined grades. So all the white bread, the white pasta, the white potatoes, all those sweetened stuff, we want to take them onto the diet or have very little of them, and focus on whole foods instead of highly processed foods. You take a walk around the grocery store and a lot of the foods you see is very highly processed, right? That's a measure of concern, because if we're trying to promote healthy eating, we need to make sure that our foods that are available to us is whole foods, and then we look at the prices of the whole foods and they're in the sky. So we have to advocate that, hey, we want better whole foods, and all these highly processed foods needs to go. Because I also work at the hospital, and the level of the rate at which people are coming in with uncontrolled diabetes or diabetes progressing to chronic kidney disease and end-stage renal disease, it is alarming, right? So focus on whole foods instead of highly processed foods. And here we have the plate. From the time we wake up in the morning to the time we go to bed, we eat. So we need to make sure that our plate is healthy and that we are following the right guidelines. So as you can see, we talked about earlier, half the plate should be non-starchy vegetables. So your greens, your yellows, your oranges, all of those should be there. And let us be mindful, when we plate our breakfast and we have bacon, sausage, egg, canned beans, and white bread, are we asking ourselves, what's missing? What should stay? What should go? Are those choices good for my body? Yes, it tastes nice, but beyond the taste, what nutrients am I getting? When we start thinking about our foods as, what is giving us life every day and what is fueling us, we'll have a different approach to the things. We wouldn't be so quick to jump to all the fast food and the quick things. We'll be more mindful, right? So half of the plate should have vegetables as best as possible. We try to have our non-starchy vegetables at every meal, breakfast, lunch, and supper, as best as possible. Quarter of our plate should be our protein and lean protein, so no longer the back and neck and the wings and all of that, because you have too much fat in it. And if you are using meats and so that have the fat, you want to remove the skin, you want to remove the fat. Likewise, you want to avoid so much of the frying. I would say have fried food just once for the month, especially if you're having diagnosed with diabetes. And quarter of your plate will be your grains and your starchy foods. So that's where your provisions come in, your rice and your pasta. Not half the plate is provisions and the other half is saltfish, or the whole plate is provision and saltfish on top of it. We want to change that approach, right?
Oh Lord. I have a question though, another question. Because I'm looking at the plate there, and all I could see is possibly lunch. I'm wondering, because you said for every meal, this is what your plate should look like. So I'm wondering, for breakfast, right? What would be examples of non-starchy vegetables that you can possibly
Everything
use?
you could eat at
for
lunch, you can have at breakfast.
Oh,
Sure.
Sometimes we
Okay.
have leftover, I guess, salad or veggies from Sunday, and we leave it until next Friday. Half of the time we don't touch it again. We forget the salad on the fridge and we have to throw it away. Now that
Okay,
leftover,
yes,
because
yeah.
salad on Sundays we try to make sure we have a salad because that's the boss meal we start in the
Right.
week, right? Okay, and then we eat a little bit. It's on a matter of fact, on a Sunday, the vegetables take up a little snippet on the corner of the plate, right? Because we have the macaroni pie,
Yeah,
the
and
rice,
and all
and then the plantain. We must
Potato
put the
salad.
potato salad, and that's already half of the plate, right? And then we have the
Yeah.
chicken and the pork and the fried fish, and then we have a little 1 tablespoon of callaloo in the corner, and a
Piece
little
of
bit
pumpkin.
of pumpkin in the corner, right? We have to
A
change
slice of
that.
cucumber.
A slice of cucumber. So we're gonna slice up more than one cucumbers,
gosh.
and you put them in a container. So Monday morning for breakfast, you add those cucumbers to your plate.
All right.
So
And
any
lettuce.
any
Lettuce.
vegetables you can have
Because you
at
can
any
have a
meal.
sandwich with, lettuce and so.
Yeah. So any vegetables are welcome on the plates. Okay.
Yeah.
Here, a lot of the time we have questions. Well, how do I know what is a portion size and what it look like? The good thing about nutrition, we try to use things that are easily accessible to us. Our hands is one of those. So if you can just follow along, you will see that the recommendation for the size of your fish or your chicken or so is the palm of your hand, the inside square, not all the way to the tip, right? So when you're plating your meal, you go by the road and you buy a piece of barbecue, and the barbecue take up your whole fingertip all the way up to your elbow. That is way more than your recommended serving, right? So you want to keep your serving sizes as best as possible. You realize that some people have bigger hands, and that's okay. That is why it is unique to you. Okay, so Sister Donnie shouldn't be watching her hand and then watching Mrs. Tabazan plate and saying, no, you're having too much. Everybody's hand, the palm is different. Likewise, what is 1 ounce of cheese or 1 ounce of meat, right? Number 2, it is a thumb, right, from the base to the tip. So if you have to cut a piece of cheese, not 4 and 5 thick chunks, it's just that one, right, the length of your thumb. A fist, like 1 cup is a fist. So if you want to do rice or so, that will be 2 regular pot spoons because half a cup is a serving, right? Good. And then so on and so forth for the tablespoon, and then for the hands, if you nuts, right? The cupped hands is a handful of nuts. Doesn't mean your hand have to be open with the fingers sticking out and say it's a handful, you have to be closed, right? And then that's a serving. So it's just an idea, so you have an idea. Because when it comes to persons with diabetes, serving sizes and portion is extremely important. I can't stress it enough. How do carbohydrates affect our blood sugar? As we said, the process is we eat our food, it goes into our digestive system, it's being digested and everything. Whenever it's digested, carbohydrate is broken down into glucose. Glucose is our main source of energy. Glucose needs to get into the cell to give us energy. That is how carbohydrate affects the blood sugar, right? Because there is a spike there. Every time we eat, it happens. The downside is that persons that have been diagnosed with diabetes, that spike of blood sugar stays in the bloodstream if they don't have any medium to bring it inside the cell for energy. Okay, so it doesn't mean you cannot have carbohydrates. It means that your choices. So a person will say, oh well, if carbohydrate affecting my blood sugar, I'm not gonna eat it at all. Wrong. That's a bad mistake. One, you get a lot of vitamins and minerals from carbohydrates, and persons become malnourished when they restrict carbohydrates from the diet. Plus, it's not sustainable because now your the diet is not completely balanced, right? Because there are different sources and types of carbohydrates. So you need carbohydrates in the diet, the types, the amount, and everything creates a perfect balance for you.
Right. So would you advise the use of high fiber carbohydrates?
Yes, definitely.
So
it's
certain-
better than simple carbohydrates.
Right. So certain thing like the green fig, green bananas.
Yes, still you cannot have a whole plate of it. You
Like
still
about how
have to
many?
stick to your portion size. So it depends if it's for a lady or a man. It depends what else is going on with them, right? So the recommendations, so 1 regular long green banana is 1 serving. right? So if it's at breakfast, you don't want to have more than 2 servings. If it's at lunch, you don't want to have more than 3. However, some persons will maximize on the banana serving and add extra. But for persons who need one-to-one guidance on how to plate the meals, how much you actually need, how much pieces of provisions they need for the meal, and so on and so forth, feel free to reach out to me. There's a program going on next week that they can sign up for, and they can get one-to-one guidance with that.
Okay, Mrs. Duncan, you said something so valuable there to me, because I have a husband there. Sometimes he looks at the nutrition thing with that, he wants to get it right to the T and dotted all his I's and all of that, right? And you said something there that's so important. You said sometimes one person can have the portion size. You said, okay, so you said one, well, we call it fig, green banana, right? But that is not necessarily, so it's one serving, but it's not necessarily that
your serving.
Right.
Yes.
Because he's always saying, okay, so he would look at the back of something that he picks up and he say, look, you see, it says 5 servings, so you have to eat half of that or one or a fifth of that, because 5 servings. I think to him 5 servings mean that's for 5 different persons. And I'm glad you spoke about that, because 5 servings does not necessarily mean that that's for 5 different persons.
Well, technically, yes, because okay, if you're looking at a container, right? Give me an example of anything. What can we think of my head? I don't know. Ice cream?
Ice cream, okay.
Yes. So let's say we have a tub of ice cream, and each serving of ice cream give you, guess, 20 grams of sugar and these grams of fat and X, Y, and Z. But then you'll see the total servings, right? So it means that 5 persons could have from that. No, if I don't have any medical condition, I can sit down and eat the whole 5 servings, right?
Okay.
Yes. I'm saying, like, you will know, but each serving tells you how much that's in there. But however, when it comes to your carbohydrate serving, if one slice of bread is a serving, doesn't mean you're limited to one slice of bread at your meal.
Okay.
Because when it comes to diabetes management, breakfast, whether it's male or female, men could have, let's say, 4 slices of bread at breakfast. Women could have 2, right?
Okay.
When it's for lunch, men could have about, let's say, 2 to 3 or more of 4 pot spoons of rice. Women could have 2. But when they come to me, you look at how tall the person is, their age, their weight, and all those things. So I'm just using this hypothetically, but it's very individualized when they come in, right?
Okay.
So to an extent, your husband is right and he's not.
Okay. So I'm hoping that he's listening.
Yes.
Please listen.
Okay.
So let's continue.
Yes.
So what else can I do if I have been diagnosed with diabetes? Keep track of your blood sugar levels to see what makes them go up and makes them go down. So you get a journal, you get a log. For if anybody interested, when you join a program, you will get everything already made for you with a log that helps you document all those things. Eat regular meals and regular times. Don't skip any meals, as Sister Donnie was asking about. You want to try and avoid skipping meals as best as possible. Choose foods that have less calories, less saturated fat, less trans fat, less sugar, and less salt, because not just sugar that affects blood sugar, but the fat intake and your salt intake as well. Track your food and your drink and your physical activity. Make sure you drink water instead of juice, soda, or any sweetened beverages. We like to put condensed milk in the porridge and in the cocoa tea and so on and so forth, but all of that increases the blood sugar reading. If you drink alcohol, you want to avoid it or limit it altogether. And if you feel for a sweet on a Sunday afternoon, don't go for the buns and the ice cream, but reach out for a fruit. Okay. And remember that you got this. What about sports and exercise? Yes, it is okay for persons to go ahead and get involved in those things, but please consult your doctor first to make sure you're all cleared and you're not at risk for anything else, because physical activity does help to control the blood sugar level. Now, we talk about the insulin resistance part of it in the beginning. Now, exercise helps insulin become more sensitive, so become more attracted to the cell, and then it helps that glucose now come into the cell better. Plus, you get to lose a few pounds, and when you get to lose weight, the fat mass decreases and then insulin sensitivity increases, so it's no longer resistant. Just a little recap: know your numbers, aim to keep your blood sugar levels within range, follow a healthy diabetic diet and a meal plan, watch your carbohydrate portions, avoid skipping meals as best as possible, limit high sodium and high fat intake, stay hydrated and adhere to your diet and medication regimen. As I was talking earlier about the nutrition program, we'll be launching it next week, Tuesday, God's willing. So persons that are interested for one-to-one session to manage your blood sugar, you can sign up. It is for 3 days, so you get different aspect. I get one-on-one meal planning guide. It'll be a group session, all virtual, and you can sign up, and then you get, once anybody interested, get more information. So you get nutrition counseling, how to read your label, talking about food sizes, even how to do grocery shopping, how to manage, when to check, how to check, and so on and so forth.
Well, this is really interesting.
Yes.
So that is, the number is down at the bottom of the flyer there. It's 406-2561. Or if just in case you misplaced the number, you can't remember, just call us at Hope. You know, our number is 403-1031. That's 1031. 403-1031. So if you have, if you're interested in doing this program, I think it's really interesting. I would love to.
406-2561.
Yes, so that's the number for Simply Nutrition, or at least if you forget, you can still call us at Hope. We will have the number ready for you. This is really interesting. I like this.
Thank
I
you.
like this. It would help people to understand. So it's nutrition counseling, it's meal planning, food label reading. And you know, reading, sometimes you know, you go to the grocery store and you're reading stuff, you're seeing stuff at the back of the whatever you pick up, a can of something or a package of something, and you're wondering, what does this really mean? You know, just like I was asking regarding the portion size.
Yes.
And so
That's okay. We're here to learn every day.
Yes. Yes. This is an interesting workshop. So is this going to be on Zoom, or is this?
Yeah, it's going to be Zoom. Most
Tuesday,
people have a
September.
Zoom platform, so I think Zoom will be quite easier. But you know, with the intake form, if persons have any other better means, we're open and welcome to do that. And it's online. It's from 5 p.m.
Right.
So persons
Good
can
time
Zoom
to-
in after work and
Yes.
so on and so forth. And even if you have not been diagnosed with diabetes, but you know of someone, you know, you can treat them and let them join the program and so on. And so they can join, and trust me, it's going to be fun, and you will learn a lot more. You will have more time to ask lots of questions apart from the program here today.
Oh yes,
So
this is
it's
wonderful.
August 29th. That's this Tuesday to the
31st.
31st.
to
Yes.
Thursday.
Yes.
Oh, yes. So please, this is an interesting program. Make sure you sign up.
right.
Guys, if you have any questions or any comments, you are free
Yes.
to ask questions. If you'd like to text us on Facebook, YouTube, you can text us if you want to do so privately on our WhatsApp number. That's 403-1031. Please, you can send in your questions. The nutritionist is here. If you have any questions on diabetes or what we spoke about this afternoon, feel free to ask your questions. All right, I'm seeing a comment here. I'm not too sure if it's a question. And she's saying, I'm really interested. It's lovely to see our own paying attention to our health, and I'm ready to limit my carbs. So that's from
That's great.
Karana. Thanks,
great.
Karana,
That's great.
for your
Thank
comments.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, yes. So this definitely a lot of information went out here. I think I'm a lot more knowledgeable about diabetes. I had a lot of questions in my head. You're always hearing
Ask
that.
the questions.
You
know.
Ask the questions.
Yeah, I
The
have a
next time you
question
see me,
too.
you have to pay. So now it's free. Ask all the questions.
Yes. So I have a question, because you said
Yes.
the conversion of food into energy
Mm-hmm.
has a lot to do with what diabetes, how it's converted.
Yes.
And food could not just only be carbohydrates,
Mm-hmm.
but you know, fats also
Yes.
are
Mhm.
good for energy.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, you hear people who are diabetic, they would say that they may find ketones
Mm-hmm.
in their urine.
Mm-hmm.
What does that indicate?
Well,
really? Mhm.
there's a lot of reasons why you could get ketones. First of all, if the person is not managing their diabetes properly, then you have that spilling, right? And then at that point, it is not good, because they could switch over to what's called diabetic ketoacidosis, and that's life threatening. It means that if person are getting ketones in
What's
their
ketones?
if person are getting ketones in their urine or in their blood samples, then the blood sugar levels are really, really out of control.
Oh,
Okay, so
Right.
ketones mean that's extra sugar or something?
Well,
From
it's
fats.
like a breakdown, all right, and so it's a form of energy as well. How you get like the glucose and so, and you hear about the ketogenic diet, right?
Right,
And
yes.
then that actually helps blood sugar control, but it's very short term. It's not long lived, right?
Okay.
Because then you remember with the diet is fat, because you limit or you restrict a complete section of a normal healthy eating diet. So yes, you can do anything really to get good blood sugar control, but anything is not what's needed. You
Okay,
understand?
all right.
Yes.
You need something long term and
Yes, and
okay.
sustainable.
Right.
Because the ketogenic diet is mostly high fat and no carbohydrates at all.
Oh,
Yes.
okay.
And I
That's-
have had persons who started ketogenic diet, they had extreme weight loss, but then they plateau and then the blood sugar readings got
Spike,
worse.
yes.
And then all the weight came back because it's not sustainable,
Right.
it's not long term.
Yes.
Some persons, however, if they have like a lot of weight and they tried everything else, hormonal imbalance, they would try it for, I would tell them, short term, just for a short to kickstart the body, but then resort to the diabetic meal plan. And the persons who wants to lose weight, and you don't have to be diabetic or anything, following a diabetic diet will help you with weight loss as well. Because remember, anything that help manages the blood sugar help manages weight.
The weight, true.
Because extra glucose is stored as fat.
Right,
Extra
right,
carbohydrates converts to extra glucose converts to fat.
right, right. Somebody's asking about the cost. I think it's maybe the cost of the
The cost of the program,
Yes.
it is $50 per day, so that's $150 for all 3 days.
All right.
Okay.
Another question here. What do you think about oil down? Is coconut oil healthy? What's your take on breadfruit consumption on a regular basis? Is it high in carbs?
So I like talking about our local traditional cultural foods. I don't want anybody to stop eating it, but I want them to modify how it's done. So first, let's start with the coconut. If you're making your oil down, you should not add coconut oil, but you should use actual local coconut to make your oil down. To answer the question about coconut oil, there's research showing that cold press, extra virgin cold press, is better consumption for the body than our local heat process method, because the heat process method, it have more saturated bonds. So if you realize when it's on a cold December season, coconut oil will solidify, right? And we want to avoid that because saturated fat is solid and the coconut oil is showing those strips. Extra virgin cold press coconut oil is different, right? So let's go back to the oil down. If you are making your oil down, you're having diagnosed with diabetes, use your coconut. Now the key here is what else you put in the oil down. Are you putting more provisions than your vegetables, or are you putting more vegetables than your provisions? So if you are making your oil down, breadfruit is a must. Dumpling is a must. Let's limit it to that. If you really want another, you add only one choice. Not breadfruit, yam, dashing, plantain, blog, or fig. No.
Sweet potato.
Sweet potato.
What
That
people
is
are put all this thing in oil
that
down?
is because the
Some people
more
is, yeah.
choices you put in that pot, the more you're going to put on your plate. So you start by the pot. So you limit the amount of carbohydrate choices. So nothing is wrong with the breadfruit, but it's how much breadfruit goes in your plate when it's ready. What about our meat choices? Is it back and neck? Is it pork rib? Is
Salt
it
pigtail.
and salt fish? And no, let us use fresh chicken and fish, right? Let us use the thigh or the drumstick, removing the skins and the fat. Okay, so you see how we just modify our traditional meal and add more vegetables. Carrots and
You can put
pumpkin and
you have
callaloo
the
and
callaloo,
beans and okra
cabbage
and
and
eggplant and you name it. We have a lot. Cauliflower,
beans.
broccoli. You have a lot. When you're plating now, then you follow the guide. If it's the breadfruit and you're a tall, big guy, then you want to put maybe one breadfruit. It depends on how long the dumpling is or how small. You could verify that, and just one piece of something else. And all the rest is veggies and your meat. So right there, the carbohydrate portion is smaller. You're enjoying your oil down. The carbohydrate portion is smaller, the vegetable portions are larger, and the meat is lean. And voila, we have oil down modified.
And they look at me.
Yeah, it sounded kind of
like you want to pick tail.
I know, right? Trust me, I make oolong that way without any salted meat, and it is just as good. A little trick is that when you're blending your seasoning, coconut milk and the tube, the saffron, and so you add peppers and garlic and green in that
Cabbage.
blend. You don't just put the seasoning just in the pot. Put it in that mixture with the milk. So then everything is seasoned. Your chicken is seasoned nicely. You put seasonings in between your pot, on top of the pot, and you're good to go. It tastes just as good, right? Remember, we're tasting not for salt but for good flavor.
Okay.
Sometimes I believe some people.
I'm sorry, I hope I answered your question.
Yes.
Sometimes I believe we have inconsistency with our eating. You find that people might get a diagnosis and say, well, you're diabetic, or you should manage your blood sugar. So you try for a while to eat properly, but then once you notice that the coast is clear, and you think people tend to go back to the way. That
it starts with our mindset. I think when we're in a situation where it's life or death, we try to make the best choice or do it very rushed, and we go and we just throw everything out of the cabinet, not thinking about our budget, not thinking about our kids or anybody else. We just clean out because right now my blood sugar high and it's getting down, and I don't care what nobody say. I'm eating only vegetables and chicken breast and yada yada yada. Okay, fine. The blood sugar come down. You can no longer afford chicken breast. You can no longer afford all these vegetables, and then you have to resort to what you're accustomed to. What do you do now? And that is where we fall back into the relapse of the cycle. But having one-on-one guidance, constantly using our local foods. So if you join the program, you'll get all this information. So it's long-lasting. Because we just rush into it, and then we don't think about anything else, and then we get to a junction where it's like, oh no, what do I do now, right? And even persons who have achieved good blood sugar reading, they try to lapse, or they might have a stressed episode, whatever, and they just resort to other things. But if you're mindful every time you eat, that you're like, okay, is that going to help me, or is it not? How often am I eating chocolate chips every night? Every time I have a hard day at work, am I resorting to this? You start thinking about, and then you make a shift.
Okay. I think we have a very, very valuable question here. I would ask a question like this: can you put everything if you're only eating oil down twice a year?
Absolutely not. Well, I would say it depends, and I think I would have to speak to that person individually, because I know some persons that have very good blood sugar readings, so I've dealt with one-on-one separately to the program, and they have rewarded themselves to have an actual traditional oil down, the way it just, because they have had blood sugar readings exceptional for almost 11 months.
Okay.
Consistently.
Yeah.
And this is not the diet changing drastically, just a normal routine, but they're just mindful and consistent. So yes, some person will treat themselves. However, the portion size still remains the same. That's the key.
Okay.
The plate size remains the same, the portion size remain the same, but you have to compensate in that meal from the other meals. So your breakfast not gonna be steak and cheese and bacon, and then lunchtime is that voila oil down.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, Sister Nautica, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, and another thing, we like a lot of one pot food. We like
Yes.
the pilau and the soups, and so I believe that there must be some way we could manage it as well, because sometimes in the soup we put a lot of different. So I mean, in making soup, what do you recommend?
It's almost the same concept like the oil down, right? We are accustomed to what we are accustomed to, and it feels good because that's how my grandmother used to make it, that's how my mother makes it, and that's how I'm going to make it. So we put all the provision we have left in the cupboard, You know, we stick the little diamond thing below in the cupboard. We put every single thing inside there, and we put maybe the salt meat, the pigtail, because we want flavor.
And we add
The
sugar too.
same and we add sugar because you know it's peas and it's a kind
The pea
of
soup,
take out
yeah.
the earth taste and you know all the different reasons you get. The same concept apply. You want to put less of those high carbohydrate foods in there, and you want to add vegetables. No vegetables are really limited to soup. You're making any soup, you can add okra, you can add pumpkin, you can put cabbage, you can put carrots, you can put beans, and so on and so forth. The key is that it depends on how you like your vegetables. You add those things at a particular time to the pot. So if you don't like your okra smushy, you like it crunchy, you add it when the pot is almost ready so it stays whole. Right, so you're making split pea soup, and so you add your okra, you add your carrot or some cauliflower. So when you're plating now, you have your peas and so forth. You have your little carbohydrates, so where they have dumpling, and you have maybe sweet potato or bananas, whatever you choose to have. That amount should not exceed 6 pieces if it's a female. Let's just stay between 6 pieces, and you have your meat if you do, and then you have your vegetables in that plate. Your dumplings should never be white flour, oatmeal, cornmeal, farine, whole wheat, whatever, but never ever white flour.
Oh wow. That's like wow for me, because I really don't like dumpling with what you call that flour again, like cornmeal and
Whole
those
wheat.
things. I would
Try
not
the
eat
oatmeal. It is
Oatmeal.
delicious.
I
oatmeal.
never tried the oatmeal, but the farine
Even the
and the
flaxseed.
cornmeal. and
I've done a chia seed dumpling. Oh my God,
Mhm.
to die for.
There's a question here that's very interesting. How hard can it be when your family doesn't understand what you just shared, and one individual is more conscious of the information than the other? So, in other words, your family, maybe your dietary information, whatever you're supposed to.
So is it a case where the family member has been diagnosed and they need it but they're not receptive to it? Is that what the question is asking? I'm trying to understand this bit
I'm
better.
not too sure, but let's take it as that.
So
Let's
can
take
you
it as
repeat the
that.
question?
How hard can it be when your family doesn't understand what you just shared, and one individual is more conscious of the information than the other? So in other words,
It's very hard.
maybe you're a diabetic, or maybe you're supposed to be following a certain diet, and your family doesn't understand.
It's hard. There are cases where the patient or the person receiving the care from the family member is the one with the medical condition. The caregiver is doing everything they can to get that person up to speed. But the person who needs it most really don't care. Like they will sneak and eat, because those cases happen. They are the provider, which is a family member or somebody being paid, will make the meals as it should be. And then somebody will come and they would, sneak in the things that person shouldn't have. I mean, it's challenging, but at the end of the day, the patient should want to make that change. If you're at a point where the patient or the person diagnosed is not ready for that change, there's nothing you or I could do. And that's one of the things when persons come to me, I ask, how ready are you? I am not going to accept your money, even if you're paying me twice or 3 times as much. If you're not ready, you're not ready, and that's it. Because it is hard for persons to accept the readiness for change. If they're not ready to make the lifestyle changes, it doesn't matter how much food you cook, how much blended thing you give them, you push it through their nose, whatever you need to do, they're not willing to accept, and that's it. And it's sad because sometimes it gets to the point where it's life-threatening, it's life or death.
Right.
And then they're ready. Some persons still are not ready. I remember a gentleman telling me it was August and he'll wait until January to change his diet because he have a ham on the freezer at home and he wants to eat it first. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
And
the
the
choices people make,
spouse is like, every day I'm cooking the meal like, as we recommend, but they go
Not
with the
eating
meal,
it.
give it to the co-worker,
Amen.
and then they
Uh-huh.
buy things on the side of it.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
People
I
have to-
understand, but
yeah.
if the patient or the person in need of the help is not ready and willing,
Mhm.
Yeah.
I'm
Doesn't
sorry.
make sense.
But you see, they always
Sure.
will find a weak link, somebody they know would will just feel
And
sorry
that
for
is
them
why
and to give it to
good
them.
good family support is important.
Exactly,
But
they must
it
team up.
come back down to the person.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I've seen situations where a family member is going to do anything for that patient, and the patient, they're just okay, whatever.
You're not bothered.
They're not bothered. And it stresses out the care providers, the caregivers, because they are the one making the sacrifices, going to the grocery store, buying the food items, you know, changing even their own diets to
they're
accommodate.
sacrificing. Exactly. Yeah.
We have 2 questions here. What about coconut water? Somebody's asking, they're saying that they've heard that it's high in carbohydrates. Is that true?
Yes.
Carbohydrates.
So having it in a regular serving size, half a cup, it's okay. But if you're drinking a whole 1.5 liter, like how they sell it in town, you're thirsty, it's a hot day, you're just drinking coconut water. Bet your bottom dollar your blood sugar will spike.
Oh, I never knew that.
Yes.
Carbohydrates, I didn't.
Yeah, some of them sweet too.
Yeah, just like our fruits, mango in season, you be diagnosed with diabetes and you sit down with a whole bucket
Wash
of mango.
pan.
Yes, a whole wash pan.
Turn pot.
Right? And it's a plastic wash pans there, you know, those deep
Big
ones.
ones.
And you have the little bag or the bucket by the side to put the skins, and you're
Yes.
talking, your neighbor is on the step, and they're just sucking
Oh
away.
my, I think you're talking to me.
And you're sucking it dry, every single one of them. No. You stick to the serving size, right? So we tell persons, if you know you like mangoes and you're having diagnosed with diabetes, don't eat the fruits when you're hungry. Have an actual proper meal and have them as a snack, right? You have some water first and then you have your fruit. So you're inclined to have less then.
Okay.
So how many mangoes you recommend a day?
One.
One mango.
My.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
one variety. So if you have mango in the mid-morning snack, you have something else for the afternoon snack.
Wow.
So
This is
okay, you can have
information.
another fruit for the afternoon snack.
Mm-hmm.
But if you prefer another mango,
Not another mango.
not another mango.
No.
Okay, I get you.
Another question
You
here.
can say the mango for tomorrow.
You could have- okay,
Yes.
so you can do another fruit. Okay.
All right. So somebody's asking. They're saying that they had gestational diabetes for both pregnancies. So they're asking, are they at risk for diabetes if they?
Absolutely, yes. And likewise the baby.
Oh,
That baby, that child is at risk for diabetes as well. So they have to make sure and have good diet in place for both them and the child. You don't have to, you're not entitled to get it, but you're at higher risk. You're more susceptible in that case. Because a lot of times, you know, persons, when going through gestational diabetes, the kids usually born bigger, you know, have more heavier birth weight, right? So you want to make sure that the child is eating healthy. You're not giving the baby flour pop and custard porridge and those type of things, because those things increases the weight, and you know, the more weight you have on excess fat, the higher risk you have of insulin resistance, and insulin resistance leads to diabetes. So you see the cycle. Yes.
Wow, I didn't realize that when the mother had the gestational diabetes, that they're actually putting the baby at risk as well.
Yes, babies at
Okay,
risk.
I didn't know.
And some persons, they are cleared for a couple years after after they have the baby, and then 3 years after, full-blown diabetes.
wow.
Yes. Because what happens is that when they have the baby, they discard the meal plan that we give them.
Right.
They discard the therapy and they go back to normal, which, the blood sugar returns to normal, but remember, you're at risk. So now you
Right.
have to pay more close attention.
Okay, wow. Some good information there.
So you see, exercise and self-control will have a lot to do with it, eh?
Oh, yes. Yes.
Self-management. Yep.
Okay. All right, guys. So, do you have any more questions, Sister Donnie?
But I wanted to talk a little bit more about the what you should have on your plate. If, like, you know, we were taught in school, you have to have a staple, the different a staple. You have meat from animals. You have legumes. You have green, dark green leafy vegetable and yellow vegetable, and then some sort of, you know, vitamin source, like maybe juice or so. So, would you have to have that for every meal, or just for your main meal, like your dinner or your lunch?
They combine using the same healthy plate model where we divide like the half and then the 2/4, it is the same thing. So your staples now would fall into the category of your carbohydrate foods, right? Your legumes, your dark green leafy vegetables, orange, purple, red, you name it, will come under your non-starchy vegetables. But you see that category here is the largest of your plate. Right? So say for instance, whatever you want to have for breakfast, lunch or supper, you want to make sure that your proportion of your veggies to your rice or your pasta or your provisions is bigger. And then food from animals would be your protein. So that same concept, because the Grenada Food and Nutrition Council, our guide has been updated, and it's the same staples and the legumes, and so it still falls back into that plate guide, right? So we have it broad, and then we minimize it so that when you get in front of your plate, you can have an easy guide for you. So it's like your plate is divided into 3 sections: half non-starchy vegetables, so all plant sources, then your staples or your starches, and then food from animal or your proteins. Your proteins, however, could also come from your legumes.
Right, from plants.
So persons who wish to do a vegetarian or vegan approach for diabetes management, feel free to call. I have an excellent program that you guys can sign up for as well.
Very good information. Guys, so again, if you're interested in doing the Zoom session, right, maybe we can put it back up on the screen. Let me just put it back up. Can you just put back up the information on the right? So it's coming up on the 28th of August, 28th to the 31st of August. 28th to the 31st, is it?
Yes.
Right,
29th.
Sorry, the 29th of August. Right, so that's next week,
it?
Tuesday.
That's this Tuesday.
Yes, that's this Tuesday.
Yes.
So this Tuesday coming up. All right. Yes, so from this Tuesday, that's the 29th of August to the 31st. So you have an opportunity to be a part of this program. You're going to learn some nutritional counseling. You're going to have some meal planning. You're going to have food label reading and a lot of different things that would be very pertinent to you, especially if you're one of those persons. Well, let me not say one of those persons, but we should all be persons who are looking at our diet and how well we eat and what we're eating and what we shouldn't eat and how much of what we should eat and all of that. So you're going to get some good counsel regarding nutrition. So you can sign up. All right. Again, the number is 406. That's 2561. All right. Or if it is that you perchance maybe you misplaced the number, you can always call us at Hope and find out what more information. So our number at Hope, 403-1031. All right. So that's it for today. Thank you so much for joining us on Team Family. It has been a pleasure having you, Mrs. Duncan. Thank you so much for coming and sharing.
That it was a sacrifice, but we are really grateful.
No problem at all.
A lot of information went forth, and for those of you who you might be looking for a good nutritionist, all right, so you have one right in front of you. This is Mrs.
Do you have an email address?
Duncan.
Yes, the email address is simply SIMPLY nutrition nutrition.gd@gmail.com.
So let me just put that up. Simply nutrition
.gd at gmail.com.
At gmail.com. Simply nutrition
At GD.
All right, so here it is. simplynutrition.gd@gmail.com. So those of you who would like to get in contact with Mrs. Duncan to find out more about your nutrition, or you want to do some plans, or if you just want some more information,
and it's good for family, just because you need to get your children, nutrition aware and be able to eating properly, eating a balanced diet, getting them used to that as well. So it's not just for the diabetic,
No.
but
It's
it's
for
for
everybody.
the entire family.
Yes,
You
You want your
yes.
family to be a healthy
Healthy,
family.
yes.
Yeah.
All right.
Mhm.
So for those of you who missed out on the program, maybe you're just logging in, maybe you missed out half of it. I know at the beginning we had a little hiccup. I thought we were live and we were not live at all. So we were there chatting and we were not live. So you can always go back and look at the program from the beginning. And again, if you want more information, you can contact simplynutrition.gd@gmail.com.
Yes.
So thank you again, Mrs. Duncan, and to all those of you who are on with us this afternoon. All right, Sister Nautica, Karana, Auntie Sylvina, DJ Sabi, everybody that was on, Sister Maureen Alexander, and I can't see every single person. There's some Facebook users here who I cannot see your name. All right, Jamila Alexander, and everybody that was on. You may be listening on our website or
On the radio.
on the radio. All right, so we may not see
I
you.
know some of these names.
Oh, you do? Okay, so, all right.
Yes.
So thank you so much for joining us. All those of you who joined us this afternoon, it was really
Yes.
a pleasure. And thank you
Thank
again,
you.
Mrs.
You're
Duncan,
most welcome.
for
Thank
being
you.
here with us. So, guys, this has been Team Family. Don't forget our TEAM. Together, we educate, affirm, and motivate families. So have a blessed Sunday afternoon and a wonderful weekend. To all the teachers who have to go back to work tomorrow, I feel your pain. It's all of us together. All right, so blessings.
Yes,
And
have a great afternoon.
Thank you,
Have a great
guys.
weekend,
Yes.
everybody.
Bye.
Yes, bye.
Even before the money, come blunt, say the money, the brother.